Selflessness is sky. The bird of the heart flies nowhere but there. That's from Jalaluddin Rumi. The wisdom religion, which Hinduism sometimes called Sanatana Dharma, and Western history has sometimes called Theosophia, and named Theosophy by Helena Blavatsky, has always existed. The ancient stanzas of Sion are the oldest account of the wisdom religion available to us. But we are incarnated beings, just beginning the reascent from matter to spirit as the fifth subrace on this fourth globe of the fourth round. Here, manas, mind, which, when fully awakened or developed, is universal in thought, is brought to the fore. Given our current state of collective evolution, we necessarily use language to communicate and share with one another. Much earlier in our history, much earlier than anything written down, we knew the wisdom religion in our hearts. But the involution or descent into increasingly concrete matter, now at its most solid, so to speak, obscured and eventually eclipsed that innate knowledge. It is our task in collective evolution to remove that obscuration so that the wisdom religion can shine through our Buddhic hearts in ever pure radiance. The voice of the silence teaches us how that can be done. Indeed, the only way it can be done. No matter whether we choose to do it for ourselves alone or for all humanity. This choice, of course, is the ultimate choice we will all have to make in the future. But as Theosophy makes clear, every choice we make, every reaction we have, tends in one or the other direction. Escape for oneself or uplift of the whole, so that when the great moment of that ultimate choice comes, our response will be based on our tendencies through numberless incarnations. Plato taught that all knowledge is recollection, and it is this recollection of what is latent in us, the wisdom religion itself, that he meant. Since we are incarnated here now, the wisdom religion has to be expressed in the languages that we use to link ourselves together. In fact, we are all the one life. But that life expresses itself in great diversity. And it is only through the awakening of manas in human beings that conscious movement toward realizing the one life is possible. This movement includes the reflection and self-reflection required for any level of realization of that truth. Hence, it is our dharma, our duty, the law of our being, to strive to realize that one life and uplift not only humanity, but the whole of nature, the whole of embodied existence, toward that realization. Theosophy is given us in the Secret Doctrine and other writings of HPB, and eloquently supported by profound teachers in her day and in the century and a half since the founding of the Theosophical Society, is an expression of the wisdom religion, the most comprehensive expression given to humanity in recorded history. Even this magnificent teaching, Theosophy, is an expression of the wisdom religion, not the whole of that truth, nor a perfectly transparent expression of it. For it reaches even beyond the one life, the unity of spirit and matter, to the formless and that which gives rise to the formless potential that involution and evolution actualizes. And as the Upanishadic Hindus say, that thou art, tat tvam asi. The wisdom religion did not spring altogether new in the 19th century. It has always been with humanity, but its expression has always been subject to two limitations. One limitation is the nature of the language, culture, and psychic condition of the people for whom it is expressed. The second limitation is the sacred safety of those to whom it is expressed. The masters of wisdom cannot interfere with karma, and so even the greatest of teachers will not give more than the people whom they teach can absorb without harming themselves or others. Nor can the most sacred truths be given to those who would only distort or mock them. The karma of denigrating the truth is heavy, tempered only by the degree of ignorance in doing so. No wonder the Christian Bible says that the one unforgivable sin is to know the truth and to reject it. Here, our ignorance is a protective illusion. If the wisdom religion has always been with us, if, as HPB taught, it is the source of the religions, philosophies, and sciences of humanity, past and present, then it must be discernible in all of them. Doing so requires understanding the concepts used in these human endeavors. It requires looking beyond the concrete and literal surfaces of those concepts and the ways they are used. That is, it requires an esoteric understanding of all traditions. While such discernment requires training, we are all familiar with the process. When someone tells us about some problem or crisis, we listen to what they say, but we also watch their expressions and body language to glean a deeper understanding than their words alone can convey. Hence, we often tell when someone is not telling the truth, when they are dodging the real issue, and so on. Friendships are often based on the ability of both parties to read each other without judgment or criticism. Sometimes we can discern another's deep concern more clearly than they can themselves. Such discernment is required for sensing the gold in the ore that presents itself to the prospector's senses. When another speaks of her beliefs, rather than merely asserting that they are not our own, or describing how we think they are in error, discernment allows us to see where therein is a sense of truth, theosophy, and we can respond in terms of that. By establishing such a bond, we can then explore together thoughts in that direction rather than merely talking past one another. HPB in The Secret Doctrine, Isis Unveiled, and many of her other writings showed how we can exercise such discernment. We cannot explore her many examples in this short presentation, and we will restrict ourselves to philosophy and religion. We recall her detailed esoteric analyses in The Esoteric Character of the Gospels, and in her many discussions of the Kabbalah throughout her writings, as well as her discussions of the real nature of the Old Testament God and the many distortions involved there. And we can exercise the principle of discernment for ourselves. Take as an example the Chinese classic Dao De Jing. This work is said to have been written by Lao Tzu, a name which simply means old master. Who he was has been the subject of much debate and need not concern us here. Written perhaps almost 6 centuries before the Common Era, it contains much metaphysical and practical wisdom. The text as we have it consists of 81 sections, sometimes called chapters, divided into 2 parts: the Tao, which is broadly more metaphysical, and De, which generally illustrates practical application of ethics. One very old text discovered in Dunhuang reverses these two sections. From the various ancient Chinese manuscripts, we know that the text was modified over time, though its essential message has remained constant. Translation always faces two challenges. One is converting concepts accurately from one language to another, and when those languages are quite different, rendering the translation in a readable form is an enormous task. The second challenge is to choose words that both convey the meaning of the original thought and do not carry all the baggage associated with them. Think of the many meanings of logos or of soul, both of which have centuries of attached philosophy and theology, which may unintentionally distort the accuracy of the translation. Even more is this true in the case of ancient Chinese, a language quite different from English, Spanish, or Portuguese. As an example, the Chinese character for Tao can be a noun or a verb, depending on context, and this is true of many Chinese characters. Tao, for instance, can mean way, path, that, the absolute, even name as a noun, and walked, trodden, be told, spoken of as a verb. Such multivalent meanings attach to almost every character in the text. We recall HPB's discussion in The Secret Doctrine of the difficulty in translating the even more ancient Senzar into the stanzas of Xian as we know them. The case of the Old Chinese language led Jonathan Starr to produce a translation that includes an analysis of each Chinese character in the text in terms of its possible meanings, along with his own translation. The first verse in the Tao section has been translated in many ways, but the following translation captures much in common with all of them. The Tao that can be spoken of is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the origin of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of myriad things. Thus, constantly without desire, one observes its essence. Constantly with desire, one observes its manifestations. These two emerge together, but differ in name. The unity is said to be the mystery of mysteries, the door to all wonders. We immediately notice that the way, the absolute, that is eternal, cannot be spoken of, just pointed to here. Thus, the name that can be named is not eternal, though it may seem eternal to us. The absolute, which cannot be spoken of, is the origin of heaven and earth, the traditional Chinese metaphor for all existence, visible and invisible to human senses. What can be named, the lower Tao, so to speak, is the mother of myriad things, a phrase which can also be translated 10,000 things, another traditional metaphor for all that exists. The nameless Tao, the unmanifest and formless, gives rise to the Tao that can be named, the manifest and form. When Tao is understood as the way, the manifest way arises from the unmanifest way and is a cosmic principle also found in the human being. The text then turns to the individual and his or her capacity for perception. If one is truly desireless, one can discern its essence. The word for discern can be translated witness or recognize, and essence can also be mystery, true nature, or even one's own nature, among other possibilities. If one has desires, one only discerns the 10,000 things. Desire is the key to knowledge. When we have desires, we can only see objects of desire, being attracted to or repelled by them. But when we are without desires, we can penetrate the true nature of existence, which is also our true nature. Here, theosophists might think of viraga in the voice of the silence. We are told that these two modes of discernment or observation are distinguished, but are really only one. They merge. And this unity is a great mystery, but also the door to all wonders. And given the Chinese characters used to express this, we can also say it is the door to one's true nature. This all too brief discussion of just the first chapter of the first section of the Dao De Jing is enough to show the profound depths of its teaching. The remainder of this short book, containing about 5,000 characters or words, expands on this doctrine and applies it to the individual human being, to society as a whole, to the nature of governance, and also characterizes the truly wise individual. Reading the whole work, one can readily find the 7 keys to the portals that lead to the other shore, according to the voice of the silence. The keys are oneself, purified by the paramitas, which name the portals. For the voice teaches one cannot travel the path until one becomes the path. One follows Tao by becoming Tao. We see here the wisdom religion expounded 2,000 years before HPB, though in a form suitable to the time and civilization in which it was given. And, like all expressions of the eternal wisdom, it remains relevant to us today, though we live in a quite different time and culture. Islam, the tradition founded by Muhammad and embodied in the Quran, consisting of revelations by the angel Gabriel to Muhammad over a period of years and gathered together after his death, has 2 broad dimensions. The common form of Islam is legalistic, reminiscent of the Talmud of Judaism, though quite different. The other form is Sufism, which avers that the Quran must be read esoterically. Believing that the divine has permeated all religious traditions, at least to some degree, Sufis teach that only through such esoteric understanding can God be understood. This stance is true of both great branches of Islam, Sunni and Shiite. Scholars have long studied the emergence of Sufi groups in Islam. They realize that Sufi thought and practice draws on classical Greek thinking, Neoplatonism, and Zoroastrianism, while adhering to the message and language of the Quran. While academic scholarship cannot trace the spirit of Sufism further back than the emergence of the great religions of the world, it is clear that it reaches back to the wisdom religion. HPB said that the most ancient religions are the Indian, Mazdean, and Egyptian. Although scholars cannot trace these traditions beyond their emergence in recorded history, HPB affirms that they have one source, the wisdom religion. All subsequent lasting spiritual traditions come from these original expressions of that one source. Henry Corbin boldly traced much Shiite Islamic spirituality, found especially in Sufism, to Zoroastrian, that is, Mazdean, religion. Given that the metaphysical dimension of Islam in its Shiite forms is found in Iran, once known as Persia, this is not surprising. Corbin explored the teachings of Shihab al-Din Umar al-Suhrawardi, known as Sheikh-e-Ishraq, Master of Illumination, for his philosophy of light. It seems that he was executed while still comparatively young for teaching esoteric doctrines. He drew on ancient Persian religious teachings to assert that everything is an outflow of primordial light, which, as it descends, loses intensity and thus becomes dispersed. All existence consists of levels of light and darkness. Human beings are souls that have become divided, so to speak, one half of which remains in heaven, that is, in eternal luminosity, while the other half is trapped in the shadowy body. The aim of self-conscious existence is to transcend embodiment and return in full consciousness to the arena of pure light, which is reality. We detect here the theosophical teaching of the dual nature of incarnated human beings. Suhrawardi drew on Zoroastrian symbolism and its doctrines to elucidate a path to perfection, tying metaphysics to ethical inner and outer development. It consists of stations or portals of various colored lights, leading ultimately to the untainted light, the source of existence. Here one might think of the references in the Voice of the Silence to sounds one hears in one's meditational efforts, and to the sound in the light and the light in the sound. Suhrawardi held that Plato, Hermes Trismegistus, and Pythagoras had all traveled the path to God. Corbin said, quote, "In northwestern Iran, Suhrawardi carried out the great project of reviving the wisdom or theosophy of ancient pre-Islamic Zoroastrian Iran," unquote. Muslims following the legalistic side of Islam, even in its Shiite version, would certainly find this heretical. In the Sunni version of Islam, once extending from Arabia to the Iberian Peninsula, Muhyiddin ibn al-Arabi so permeated Islamic theology that his presence in all subsequent Islamic philosophical thought is like that of Plato in Western thinking. One of his favorite metaphors was that of the polished mirror. Islam holds that the Quran reveals 99 names of Allah. Allah as the name of God comes from the Arabic al-ilah, meaning the God. Many of these names are the opposites that are featured in human experience. There is also a secret 100th name, which remains unknown. Ibn al-Arabi taught that these names are the intelligent aspects of deity that permeate all nature. Indeed, they constitute it. Only in the human being, however, are all the names found together, though they are present in a confused, even chaotic manner. One might think of them as intelligent forces which need to be spiritually rectified. Ibn al-Arabi's favorite metaphor is that of the polished mirror. In his time, mirrors were polished metal that could reflect one's image. Polishing the mirror consists in nurturing and living the virtues suggested by the names. One name is al-Haq, the true or the real. If one reads his voluminous work, one discerns the same path indicated in the voice, but put in Islamic terms. Notably, these virtues include reverence for everything sacred, and everything is sacred because consisting of the names, and gratitude to one's teachers, visible and invisible. He emphasized through his vision of the names, Wadat al-Wujud, the unity of being, which theosophists know as the one life. These few examples, chosen from among many that could have been picked, merely scratch the surface of the wisdom religion's presence before HPB. They intimate, as HPB demonstrated throughout her writings, that the wisdom religion was never entirely lost from its expression at the beginning of our fifth race. As human beings descended ever deeper into matter and grew ever more involved in its distractions, The most sacred teachings were, when necessary, hidden, and as humans turned away from their spiritual natures, sometimes actively suppressed. In the West, one can think of the suppression and loss of Gnostic texts, many recovered only within the last century, and of the corruption of ancient doctrines by those who too easily said, "Behold, I know." The academic pressure to be original, rather than to understand ancient timeless thinking, has not helped in this regard. Theosophists strive to understand, and while they work to express such wisdom in fresh and comprehensible ways, they do not see such ephemeral originality, since, as the Hebrew Bible taught, there is nothing new under the sun. What is new in the last 150 years is the unveiling of the wisdom religion to an extent not seen in well over 2 millennia and more. Humanity in general lost its natural connection with the wisdom religion through identifying with the lower nature, mistakenly believing that the human beings are the tools, the lower quaternary, that they use to gain experience. The wisdom religion, or that unveiled portion of it called Theosophy, aims to awaken us from that misidentification. The error is so deep, the voice calls it the dire heresy of separateness, that we have to walk the paramita path, climb the ladder of lights, polish the mirror of our being through gradual realization and pure expression of that realization in outer interactions with others and all of nature. In doing so, we not only regain our inheritance, which is our true self, but uplift the whole of humanity and nature on the never-ending evolutionary path of increasing awareness and approach reality, which we are. For the Logos in the cosmos is the God in man, and we are what is best in us. Thank you.